So we have covered the early history of Southwest Asia, and also we have covered some of the Islamic expansions, how did Islam rise in this area, and what kind of religion, other religions were rising to at this time. And today we'll be covering the modern Southwest Asia. Okay, then after we finish this lesson, for people who were asking about the homework, you're going to do a timeline for this lesson and to finish the practice book questions and send them to my SMS email. Okay, to the SMS email.
Miss,
Yes.
Miss page كام في practice
What?
page كام في practice book
Page 236. 236.
لا
All
Miss
right.
in the practice book
Text your practice book. It's
yes
the history. You find the page. It's the history of Southwest Asia. You can
yes
find it easily. Okay. All right. Who can start reading? Reem, go ahead.
Okay. Modern Southwest Asia. The past century has been a period of change and conflict for Southwest Asia. New countries have been born, new borders have been drawn, and numerous wars have been fought. Vast petroleum reserves discovered during this period have brought great wealth to some of the region's countries, but have also created new tensions and conflicts. Independent countries.
Wait a minute, Yarim, let me explain this part. So at this part, they said that the past century was a period of change and conflict. Why? Why it was a period of change and conflict at the same time? Because they have discovered many resources, and one of the most important resources were the reservoirs for oil or petroleum. And at the same time, it was a period of change because many countries has changed after getting large wealth. Okay, and they have changed the society itself. Who can give me an example of a country that have changed after discovering petroleum? Hmm. Who can tell me, yani, from your experience, what kind of a country maybe has changed after discovering petroleum and they become more modern? Hannah Hamdi?
Maybe Egypt because we have a lot of uses for petroleum.
Maybe, but I mean, they became very rich. They were only living in deserts and they became very rich now. Thank you, Hannah. Osama,
Saudi Arabia.
can you tell us?
They have the second most the amount of petroleum. They depending on petroleum for exporting it.
Yes. How did their life change?
They were living at deserts at first, but then when they discovered, they started trading with the petroleum, and they got more modernized.
Yes, that's the word I was searching for. Thank you, Osama. Okay, Reem, please continue.
Okay. Independent countries. After reaching the peak of its power in the 1500s, the Ottoman Empire began to decline. The decline worsened in the 1800s and early 1900s. During that time, the empire lost African and European territories through wars, treaties, and revolutions. After fighting alongside the losing Central Powers in World War I, the empire was formally dissolved. A few years later, the modern country of Turkey was founded on the Anatolian Peninsula, where the empire had been born. European interests and
we said that there was the empire that was ruling at this time was the Ottoman Empire, and it was a very, very long empire. And actually, it was very strong and powerful and has affected many countries around it. But actually, after the African and the European territories were such as and treaties and revolutions, such as the World War One and in the Central War, the Ottoman Empire was dissolved or was formally dissolved. So everything has changed since then. Okay, thank you, Arim. Who can continue? Judy, go ahead.
European interest and influence in Southwest Asia had been growing since the 1869 completion of the Suez Canal, which quickly became an important world waterway. In the peace settlement that ended World War I, Britain and France gained control over the Ottoman Empire's former territories under a mandate system. In this arrangement, the people of these territories were to be prepared for eventual independence. Dividing up their territories, the British and French created new political boundaries that showed little regard for existing ethnic, religious, political, or historical divisions. These boundaries would take on deep importance when the territorial units became independent countries and when new discoveries of petroleum deposits were made. Long-simmering resentment toward the European colonial powers soon grew into strong nationalist movements among Arabs, Persians, Turks, and other groups. Before 1930 and 1971, one country after another won its independence, and the map of Southwest Asia began to take its present form.
Thank you, Judy. So after the end of World War I, we said that the Britain and France, because they were the main or the most powerful countries in the world, they were changing or they were gaining actually the power over the world. They have changed the map since then. They have put new boundaries between countries. Boundaries were set according to historical, ethnic, religion, but actually this one was set according to their importance or historical divisions. No, these boundaries would take according to independent countries. يعني whenever a country take its independence, they put their boundaries. So they started مثلا, for example, if Egypt takes its independence, they put boundaries for themselves. But actually, the powers grew into strong nationalists movement, and Arabs and Persian and Turks, all of them take their independence and they became independent countries. Yani after they were one empire with the Ottoman Empire, then the colonists of Britain and France take over the area. No, they won their independence one country followed by another, and they became independent countries. This is how the map changed after World War I. Okay, who can continue the Arab-Israeli conflict? Noor al-Mahi?
One of the mandates received by Britain after World War I was the territory called Palestine. It roughly corresponded to the land of Israel, which was the area inhabited by the Jewish people in ancient times. Most of the people living in Palestine at the time of the mandate were Muslim Arabs. During the same period, growing numbers of Jewish immigrants seeking to escape persecution had been arriving from Europe and other parts of the world. As the Jewish population increased, tensions between Palestinian Arabs and Jews deepened. Jewish nationalists called the re-establishment of their historic homeland in Palestine. This movement gained support as a result of the Holocaust. The systematic murder of 6 million European Jews by Nazi Germany during World War II. Hundreds of thousands of Jews who survived the Holocaust were now refugees in search of a place to live. In 1947, the United Nations decided on the issue of Palestine. The United Nations voted to divide the territory into 2 states, one Arab and one Jewish. The proposal was rejected by the Arabs.
So, how can summarize the Arab-Israel conflict? Who can summarize it after reading it? How did it happen, Yan? Hannah Hamdi, can you tell us how did it happen?
the Israel they were the territory they were in the Palestine and they were trying to escape.
Jewish people were all over the world. They weren't in Palestine. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Then what happened?
Miss, can I say?
Yes, Yanur, go ahead. Complete.
Jew refugees from the Holocaust wanted the land to live in. It was Palestine so they wanted to
Fine. Why didn't go مثلا to any country? And why did they...
because it was too close to Israel, so it was easy.
There was no Israel, guys.
ماشي.
There was no Israel أصلا. It was all Palestine. They chose this country or this area in particular because they believe that they used to live in the past. He said that. Okay, in the past, they used to live at the beginning of the Jewish religion. We've discussed this before. So that's why this area was inhabited by Jewish people in ancient times, okay? That's why they choose this area in particular. So they wanted to go back to their original land, but actually it wasn't them. It belonged to Palestine people. So there was a conflict. What happened after the conflict?
The system wanted to divide Palestine into two regions, one for the Jews and one for the Arabs, but they didn't.
The United
Nations.
Miss هو the division that they made اللي هي East Palestine and West Palestine?
East
Well, this is something else.
No. They were choosing some areas and they were leaving other areas for Palestinian people. And this is what's happening today. They want to take over the whole land of Palestine.
أيوة يعني أصل they divided Palestine to two one for the Palestinians اللي هي عند الشجرة
Yes.
and the other one. So I thought and the other one for the Jews اللي هي إسرائيل.
Yes. And
so they took over both sides.
Yes. No, they didn't take over both sides. They choose one side, and after that, they've changed its name to Israel. And the conflict is still happening till today. So who can summarize the Arab-Israeli conflict again? Usama, you were raising your hand. Because it's very important. What happened? What are the reasons behind it? And what is the current situation?
The Jews at first didn't have any place to stay at, so they colonized Palestine and divided them into two regions. But then the Arabs didn't agree for this agreement. So the American Union made a deal or treaty
nations, not
to separate them. Separate them both the same land.
They divided the land among them. But actually, why did they choose Palestine? I told you.
Because they believed that it was the holy city when their religion became.
Yes, the religion, and they used to live in it in ancient times. And what was the reason to leave the whole world and to gather in one place? It happened after World War II. Why?
No, I don't know.
What happened in World War II? Who can tell me? After World War II, it was something very important. Noor al-Mahi?
Miss, can you repeat the question?
What happened in World War II to Jews? Why did
they were the Nazi Germany were putting them in concentration camps. The Holocaust,
Yes. The Holocaust was done by Hitler. Okay, Noor, can you continue reading? The Arabs?
The Arabs did not want to give up land. On the day in 1948 that Israel, the Jewish state, declared its independence, armies from neighboring Arab countries invaded. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs became refugees after fleeing the violence. That war ended with a truce in 1948. Other major Arab-Israeli wars were fought, however, in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. During a brief 1967 war, Israel captured areas known as the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, and مش عارفة إيه heights.
The Golan Heights.
Golan Heights. Its control of these areas was opposed by Palestinian Arabs and neighboring Arab countries, which led to further conflict. Israel withdrew from the Sinai Peninsula in 1982 and from the Gaza Strip in 2005. It continues to control the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Numerous attempts have been made to find a peaceful solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict, but so far, none have been successful.
So this was your question, ya Judy. They were trying to control, or the Israeli actually captured areas which is known as the West Bank and East Jerusalem. These are the important areas.
This is the one I thought.
Yes, and Sinai Peninsula, of course, in Egypt, and Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights too. But after many wars, Golan Heights were free, and طبعا Sinai Peninsula was free in the war of 1973. Then Taba was freed after that in 1984. Then we still have, or they still have, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The fight still till today, and they want to take over more land from the Palestinian people, and the conflict is still happening till today. Okay, who can read?
Miss, can I ask a question?
Yes, yeah, you can see.
Miss, the dates with us?
If there are any dates needs to be memorized, I will tell you about them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, who can read about the 7 wars? Who's attending, guys, today? Okay, Hannah Hamzi, go ahead.
Okay, civil wars. In addition to the strife between Arabs and Israelis, Southwest Asia has seen numerous other conflicts since World War II. Ethnic, religious, and political differences have fueled many conflicts. So has the rise of Islamist movements that consider Islam to be a political system as well as a religion. The desire to control large oil fields has also caused or contributed to many of the conflicts. Civil wars have torn apart Lebanon, Afghanistan, and Yemen. The Kurds, a fiercely independent people living in eastern Turkey, northern Iraq, and western Iran, have fought to gain their own country. A revolution in Iran in the late 1970s resulted in the overthrow of that country's monarchy and the establishment of an Islamic republic. Iraq invaded Iran in 1980, touching off an eight-year-long war. A decade later, Iraq invaded and annexed as its small but oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait. This invasion triggered the Persian Gulf War, in which a coalition led by the United States quickly liberated Kuwait.
So there were many civil wars in the area, over the land, over the petroleum. So طبعا this in addition to Arab and Israeli conflict. At the beginning, there were conflict after World War II, ethnic, religion, political differences. Actually, there were there was something called Islamic movements. This is number 1, which consider Islam to be the political system as well the religion. So this was the first fuel for the civil war, the Islamists movement. Okay. Also, the desire to control oil field caused or contributed to the many conflicts, such as the civil war that torn apart Lebanon, Afghanistan, and Yemen. So this is number 2. Also, the Kurds wanted to have their own independent country. And they were living mainly in Iraq and in Turkey, and also part of Iran. So they fought to gain their own country. So this is number 3, the fight of the Kurds. Number 4, the revolution in Iran, which has led to overthrown the monarchy and the establishment of Islamic Republic, which still ruling till today. This is number 4. Number 5, Iraq invasion for Iran, then its invasion for Kuwait. So there were 7 wars for several reasons, whether the reasons were religions, political, or even related to the resources. Again, number 1, the Islamist movement, which considered Islam to be a political system and religion at the same time. Number 2, civil war in Lebanon, Afghanistan, and Yemen. Number 3, the Kurds, which were living in part of Turkey, Iran, and Iraq, wanted to have their own independent country. Number 4, the revolution in Iran, which has led to overthrow the monarchy and establish an Islamic republic. Number 5, Iraq invasion for Iran, then its invasion for Kuwait. Okay. The last part for today, which is the conflict and terrorism, then looking at the future. Okay, who can read? Let me see. Okay, Kenzie Tahan, read.
On September 11, 21, an Islamic organization called
Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda carried out the terrorist attack on U.S. soil that killed near 3,000 people. The United States determined Afghanistan Islamists ruling the group, the Taliban, was supporting the Al-Qaeda and shielding its leaders in October. Force led by the United States and the United Kingdom invaded Afghanistan and removed the Taliban from the power.
Okay, so this is number 1. In September 11, 2001, there was an Islamic organization called Al-Qaeda. They were attacking the US soil, and they were supported by a ruling group called Taliban, but actually they have forces led by United States and United Kingdom have invaded already Afghanistan and removed Taliban from power. Also, the second Persian Gulf War began when forces from United States and United Kingdom invaded Iraq. So this was the second Persian Gulf War. They were invading Iraq and they have overthrown Saddam Hussein, and Saddam Hussein was accused of possessing weapons of mass destruction, which was a suspicion that eventually proved to be untrue. It wasn't true aslan at the end. So there were two conflicts in the area. The conflict of the Al-Qaeda, which was carried out by Taliban, and already US have invaded the area and removed Taliban from being a ruling party. And the second one was the second Persian Gulf War, when United States have invaded Iraq and they removed Saddam Hussein, but actually they were wrong or they were untrue. Okay, who can complete the last part? Yusuf, go ahead.
Looking to the future. Despite the many conflicts, there is hope for a more peaceful and brighter future in Southwest Asia. Revenue from petroleum has brought prosperity and modernization to oil-rich countries of the Persian Gulf. In 2010 and 2011, a popular uprising in Tunisia inspired democratic movements in Yemen, Bahrain, and Syria. On the other hand, militant Islamic political movements limit the growth of democracy and civil rights. In addition, throughout the region, major gaps still exist in standards for living between the oil-rich countries and poorer countries.
Thank you, Yusuf. So if we are looking at the future, despite we have many conflicts, there is hope for peaceful and brighter future. But as you can see, there is a revenue from the petroleum, because it brought many prosperity and modernization, طبعا for oil-rich countries. But there was in 2011 uprising in Tunisia inspired by democratic movements in Yemen, Bahrain, and Syria. There were like revolutions, but as you can see, you'll find also militant Islamic political movements. At the end, the petroleum has affected the standard of living of the countries who are producing oil. That's it for today. We have finished the lesson. Inshallah, I will see you after Eid. Don't forget about your homework. We're going to be having the practice book question and the timeline for that lesson. Okay? Anyone want to ask any question, guys?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, see you after Eid, inshallah. Bye.
But